All right, let's dive right into a really fascinating thought experiment. Imagine for a second that the 20th century, a period we know for its brutal wars and conflict, took a completely different path. A path that was quiet, peaceful, but just as revolutionary. This is a look at the world that could have been.
So, let's start with this big question. When you think of the word revolution, what comes to mind? Probably violence, chaos, big loud events, right? But what if the most important revolution in human history wasn't a bang, but a whisper? What if, all at once, millions of people around the world just stopped?
To really wrap our heads around how this alternate timeline could even happen, we have to go back and find the exact fork in the road. We need to find the moment our history went one way and this other one went a different way. And it all comes down to a fundamental flaw in the way we've always thought about revolution.
See, in our world, the 20th century was basically one long, bloody argument over how to respond to capitalism. The main idea was that the system was broken and the only way to fix it was to fight, to use force to take control of the government and build something new from the top down.
So after Marx, his followers basically split into two big camps. On one side, you had the revolutionaries like Lenin, whose game plan was pretty simple: seize power, use force, whatever it takes. On the other side, you had the reformers, who thought, hey, let's just work within the system and change it slowly from the inside. And the history that you and I know is pretty much the story of those two ideas smashing into each other for 100 years.
But this is where our timeline splits. Because what if both of those paths completely missed the point? What if there was a third option, a different way that wasn't about violent takeover or slow, painful compromise?
And that third path brings us to the hero of this story. And he wasn't a general or a president or anything like that. He was a philosopher, a guy named Elias Roth, and he wrote a little book called Synthesis. So in this alternate timeline, it's 1895, and Roth publishes this book, and his argument is as simple as it is radical. He basically says you can't build a free society using the tools of oppression. You can't use a powerful, centralized state and violence to create freedom. It's like trying to put out a fire with a flamethrower. It's just doomed to fail. So he lays out this three-step plan for a totally new kind of revolution. It starts with something he calls the Great Refusal. That's followed by the withering away of the state itself, and it all leads to the final stage, the emergence of a system he called Nexus. Okay, let's break that down. The Great Refusal isn't a protest. It's a global, nonviolent strike where people just stop participating in the old system. They withdraw their consent. Then, the withering away happens at the same time. Instead of trying to take over the government, people just start building their own local councils and communities, making the old state totally irrelevant from day one. And finally, Nexus. This was Roth's wildest idea, that these new communities would eventually create a kind of benevolent open-source AI, a completely transparent tool to manage all of Earth's resources fairly, for everyone.
Now, an idea in a book is one thing. Actually making it happen in the real world, that's a whole different story. So let's see how this incredible idea actually became a reality.
Well, at first, Roth's book was pretty much ignored. People thought it was just fantasy. But then, the first half of the 20th century happened. 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the sheer amount of suffering was staggering, and it made people desperate for a new way of doing things. And slowly, Roth's ideas started to spread, passed around in unions and universities. And by the spring of 1948, the world was finally ready to listen.
And the revolution, when it came, wasn't a battle, it was a global shutdown. All across the world, millions of people just put down their tools and walked away from their jobs. They didn't storm the capitals, they just went home. They planted gardens, they started community kitchens. They just refused to play the game anymore. The old system had no one to command and nothing to run. It just stopped.
So, what kind of world did this create? Let's jump forward to today, to 2025 in this alternate timeline. What does it actually look like to live in this age of Nexus? For starters, money doesn't exist anymore. It's been totally replaced by something called a reputation score. And this has nothing to do with wealth. It's a transparent score managed by the Nexus AI that simply reflects your contributions to society. A great doctor, a brilliant artist, a compassionate caregiver, they would all have incredibly high scores because what they do is seen as truly valuable.
And a shift like that changes, well, everything. People don't have jobs, they have contributions. Without a profit motive, technology is all about making life better. So clean energy is universal and free for everyone. They've used tools like CRISPR to cure most genetic diseases. Space exploration isn't some nationalistic race, it's a unified human effort.
And with everyone's basic needs met, humanity has entered an unbelievable golden age of art, music, and philosophy.
But here's the twist. This world is not a perfect utopia with no problems. Not at all. It just traded in our old problems for a whole new set of challenges. Challenges that are much more philosophical.
The first big problem is a crisis of meaning. I mean, when you don't have to struggle just to survive, what's your purpose? What gets you out of bed in the morning? For a lot of people in this post-scarcity world, it leads to this deep, profound sense of emptiness.
And then you've got the people they call the off-gridders. These are folks who want nothing to do with Nexus or the reputation score. They value their privacy above all else. So they live in these isolated, self-sufficient communities. And they ask a really important question. Can you really be free in a society that's completely connected and transparent?
And finally, there's the big one, the first contact problem. This version of humanity is unified, cooperative, and has forgotten what war even is. But what happens if they finally meet an alien species out there that isn't so peaceful? Has this society become so gentle that it's no longer able to survive a real existential threat?
And that really leaves us with this powerful final thought. In this version of history, the answer wasn't to fight the old system with its own violent rules. The answer was to make the old system obsolete. Humanity didn't win by conquering it, they won by having the courage to simply turn their backs and build something new, a quiet revolution, indeed.